Serious, Reddit, what are your creepy, unexplainable, or just weird things that have occurred in your life? About 2 years after my uncle killed himself, we had a big 60th birthday party for my grandmother. We brought the helium balloons home to her condo after the party. One of them started following her, including going down under door frames and bulkheads, then going back up to the ceiling. We never saw it, it would just turn up. It was printed "I love you, Mom." She would leave the balloon in the dining room where it was with the rest of the balloons, go into her bedroom and get ready for bed, go in and out of the bathroom, without leaving the bedroom, i.e. not going any closer to the balloon, and get into bed, with the balloon outside of the bedroom still. In the morning, she would wake up with the balloon quietly hovering beside the bed. Or, she would leave the balloon in the dining room with the rest and leave the house completely, with the balloon not hovering near for the putting on of coats and boots, etc., and come back to find the balloon waiting patiently by the door. This could be explained by the air pressure change sucking the balloon towards the door when she left, but doesn't explain why only one of the balloons detached itself from the group and the rest remained as left. So, I guess static is a possibility but does not explain why only one balloon was affected. This happened about 6 years ago. A couple friends and I have decided to go out into the woods and build a base camp. We brought axes, machetes, fuel and a tent. We walked deep into the woods and spent all day cutting down trees and building a makeshift fence. Being idiots as it became dark, we realized we had no way to see. We started a fire, and I realized if we poured some fuel into a small can, we could light the fumes at the top and create a torch. We made several torches and placed them in the surrounding woods. It got very dark, we needed more logs for the fire, so I was out about 20 meters from our camp. I could hear my friends talking. I was swinging at the tree when I felt something hit my back. I froze and turned out around, staring into the dark forest right at the edge of lights from our torches. I saw nothing, and I assumed something had fallen off the tree and hit my shoulder. Right as I was about to swing, something hits me in the back of the head, and it hurt enough to make me swing around again. I saw a rock at my feet, and I was terrified now. Turning back to walk towards camp, I could hear my friends and see the light from the fire. I kept turning my head, looking into the darkness. About halfway to camp, a rock flew by me, missing my head by inches. I ran back to camp and told everyone, and they saw the terror in my face. We sat for a while before more rocks came. We couldn't see anyone or anything, just rocks flying into camp. Needless to say, we didn't sleep, just chilled in the tent holding machetes and keeping a big fire. There were so many rocks in the morning, the thought still terrifies me. We were deep in the woods, no one else should have been out there. I want to say it was a person, but we didn't hear anything or see anything. Just so many rocks. Just to clarify, there were no cliffs of any sort. We were in rural Saskatchewan in Canada. I would love to say it was Bigfoot, but the forest was silent. If it was Bigfoot, then he's light on his feet. All you could hear was the rocks hitting the ground. The thought of laying there hearing these still freaks me out. There should have been no people around. We were really deep in the forest. We were far away from any kind of town or settlement, almost in a nature reserve. Walking back to my friends, I felt like the whole forest was watching me. The haunting feeling of being so vulnerable and trying to keep it together while wondering if you're crazy or if you're really in danger. There were a lot of rocks in the morning, well over 100, ranging in sizes, some were scarily large. None larger than the size of a fist. TLDR, squirrels that throw rocks if you don't feed them. Outdoors person here. I've got a long story for you. Went out on a backpacking trip to a popular off-roading area. Lots of people like to camp nearby. However, 20 minutes of hiking into the bush and away from the trails, and you're into pristine, untouched wilderness. It was several hours out, on the far side of a valley between two very large hills or tiny mountains. Set up camp for the night. Got my fire going, sitting all comfy. Thunk. A rock lands next to me. Ha, that was weird. A while later, thunk. A hard pine cone lands next to me. By this time, I had only one thought, the stories my grandmother used to tell of Sasquatch. How she'd leave Doritos out on her porch, and there'd be a pile of blackberries there the next day. I never really took them seriously, but it was all I could think about. I decided to sleep by the fire instead of my hammock, gun in one hand, bear spray in the other, just in case. I made through to morning, not a lot of sleep but some. Part of me wanted to pack up and go back, but after breakfast, I made the decision. I left a trail map. If anything happens, people know exactly where to come looking. I'm well armed, and well supplied. Fuck it, I'm gonna stay and meet Sasquatch, or find whoever is messing with me. Night 2, going against every kind of sense and training for moving through the backcountry, I left food out. A fair distance from my camp, Just outside I shot a bag of trail mix. Nothing happened that night. It was quiet, but not too quiet. Well past midnight, I gave up, crawled into my hammock and went to sleep. In the morning, I checked my trail mix. Gone, unsurprisingly. Night 3. My plan last night. Figure I must have just spooked myself into hearing falling rocks or something. Being alone in the woods does that to you sometimes. You can get so intent on listening, you start to hear things that weren't there. So, I sit around the fire as evening comes in, eating my remaining trail mix while reading. Thunk, next to me. Okay, you're just imagining it, ignore it. Turn the page. Thunk, this one right on my head. I wouldn't say it hurt, but it was definitely unpleasant. Okay, not imagining it. Stand up, safety catch on the bear spray off, flashlight in the other hand, as the sun sets. A quick look around, nothing. Thunk. A rock lands at my feet. Thorough look, slow 360, try and see anything. Thunk thunk. A rock hits me in the back, another off the brim of my hat. Put the bear spray down, pick up my rifle and loudly cycle the action to chamber a round. Right, this has been quite funny, but I'd like to go back to my book. I am armed, and I do not take lightly to be being assaulted with rocks. No response. I remain still, hoping to hear something, some sign of a bad practical joke. What felt like an hour passed, more likely only a few minutes. Nothing. More time. Still nothing. Whoever it was, must have decided to leave me alone. Sit down, go back to my book. I'm only half reading it, keeping one eye up and my ears open to the forest around me. The sun goes all the way down, and it's dark. Thunk. Threw my book aside, grabbed my rifle and was on my feet doing circles around my fire. I couldn't keep still. Somewhere between angry at it being a prank, and terrified that it wasn't. Back off. This is your only warning, and that's when shit got real for me. Stone after stone, maybe one every few seconds. From every direction at once. I have never felt so vulnerable. Thunk, one would hit, spin around, lift the rifle up, empty forest. Thunk, turn to face it, lift the rifle up, empty forest. After a solid minute, I could feel myself losing the ability to stay calm. I fired a warning shot into the dirt a few feet in front of me, well within view of my fire, just in case. Silence, minus the ringing in my ears. Hours pass. I sat with my back to the fire, figured I might need night vision. I didn't sleep a moment that night. Thinking back, after that shot, I didn't think about anything. It was just calm, focused. If I stopped paying attention for 1 second, it's going to eat me. Rocks would still land near me. All night. Not often, often enough. By the time the sun started coming up, I was beyond exhausted. With some light around me, rifle at the ready, I went to retrieve my food from the barrack I'd strung up. It was covered in squirrels. There must have been at least 20. As I approached, they scattered. They hadn't managed to chew through it, but it looked like they'd been in it all night. Opened it up right there to pull out some beef jerky. Thunk. Thunk 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 thunk. It was the goddamn squirrels throwing rocks at me the whole time. Now it was light out, I could see it. I have never felt so stupid. I was about 17 to 18 and living in Maine with my cousins. It was summer, and kids were out of school, and one of these summer days, my cousins and I tagged along with a group of friends and ended up at a pit party. This is the middle of the day, so broad daylight. We have a fire going, and we are drinking and laughing, having a good time or whatever, but I have that feeling of being watched. At one point, I get up to collect more firewood, and as I'm collecting it in the woods, I hear the rustling of leaves, and I'm sure it's not me, so I freeze, and a second later, whatever was moving stops too. I scan around but don't see anything. Vegetation can grow pretty thick in the middle of a Maine summer. I go back with my firewood, and I alert my friends that I think somebody is watching us in the woods. Nobody really pays attention or cares. But I keep scanning the woods and listening, and everyone once in a while, I can hear something with mass moving through the brush. I'm not overly into paranormal things, so at this point, I'm assuming that this is a nosy person or possibly the landowner. I try again to no avail to convince my friends we are being watched. Seriously, there is somebody in the woods. They are watching us. A few people start listening now too, and some this goes on for a time. Every short while, I can hear it move again. I call out, "Hey, who's out there?" No answer. I'm pretty creeped out at this point. Like I said, I assumed it to just be the landowner or whatever, but I didn't want to risk it being someone with more malicious intent. I've had enough at this point, so I gather my cousins and close friend, and we hightail it out of there. I am certain there was somebody skulking around in the woods. Well, sometime later, I found out that minutes after we left, The cops arrived and busted up the party, so I had a good time gloating about being right to my cousins and friend about somebody being in the woods and basically saving our asses with my vigilance. Like I said, I am certain there was somebody skulking around in the woods, and I feel pretty strongly it was this person who called the cops. It was still pretty creepy how sneaky they were and how long they watched us for. This happened when I was living in Indonesia. To set the scene. If anyone on the minute off chance knows this woman or someone has told you this happened to them, please do pipe up. It's obsessed me since it happened, and I think about this woman every day. So we had a house for a while that was a bit like a wedding cake. On top was a little snug room a bit like a ship crow's nest, you could see for ages around. We were in the middle of an empty, square patch of land, and it backed onto an unused field, big, flat, open, nowhere to hide. No trees lining it, just more flat fields and then a tall back wall. A wall of about 4 feet high separated the field and my house. One day, late afternoon kind of time, I'm up there just relaxing, and I hear these blood-curdling screams, help me, all of that. A woman, probably Australian or Kiwi, screaming in English. I've never heard anything like it. From my nest, I can see her running across the field at the back, kind of limping, pretty sure she was bloodied, messed up. Either way, she was about halfway through it when I saw her. Big field. I ran down to the ground floor and towards the field, and she was gone, no sign of her at all. It took me a minute, if that. I was gunning it down there to get to the field, but she had just vanished, nowhere to be seen. Unless Usain Bolt was pursuing her, it is incredibly unlikely someone came into the field, grabbed her and pulled her back out without me having seen them. Pretty much impossible, really. I sent my house security out to look for her. I stayed in the field looking, and they went towards where she came from, and over the wall. She had to have come over to get into the field. It was an unused holiday villa, and they found a sandal and a bit of blood, nothing else. There was blood on the wall where she climbed over, but nothing going the other way, so I know I didn't imagine it or make it up. We called the police, and they came and had a look, and they also found nothing. Posters went up and stuff. Nobody got back to us or anything. No one knows what happened when I was coming downstairs, but I know, it can't have been good. Still freaks me the fuck out. A few years back, I was falling asleep with my wife cuddled up to me on my left side. I'm at that point where I'm just starting to fall asleep but still very slightly lucid. Suddenly the hair on my body sort of stands up, I feel this chill, and then I hear this weird, almost whisper in my right ear. It sounded almost like someone talking backwards, think spirit healer from WoW. My eyes snapped open, and nothing was out of the ordinary, so I went back to sleep and just brushed it off as my imagination. The next morning my wife says she had this weird dream. She says she dreamed she was in bed and her old childhood friend was standing at the foot of the bed. He climbed onto the bed and began whispering in my right ear. She said she thought it was kinda a weird dream, since her friend had recently committed suicide. About 10 years ago, I was at a relative's house, a cottage in a small Michigan coastal town, for my summer vacation. She was almost completely deaf. Without hearing aids, she was completely deaf. Because of her impairment, she had a security system that flashed lights and called her home phone, which also had a light, in addition to a sound alarm. This is important later. I had gone out to see the 4th of July carnival and arrived home at 11 o'clock. My relative went to sleep at 8 o'clock every night at the latest. When I came in, I turned off the alarm, essentially signed myself in, and turned it back on again, like I did every time I came home late. I poured myself a glass of water and walked upstairs. Now, upstairs there was a long hallway. At the end of it was the door to a patio overlooking the backyard. We never used it because it wasn't up to code. The house was built in the late 1800s, and many aspects weren't worth the money it would cost to fix them. So, there was a decorative antique chair that was propped against the door to the back patio. When I walked in that night, the chair was propped against my bedroom door instead, leaning underneath the doorknob as if to keep someone from exiting. I bolted for my relative's room to find her fast asleep. Her guard dog was also asleep. I woke my relative up, and she put in her hearing aids. She called the alarm company, and they had no record of anything besides her setting the alarm at 6:30 and my entrance at 11 o'clock. They called the police anyway. When the cops arrived, they moved the chair and attempted to open my bedroom door. It was locked. The doorknob was original to the house, and there was no key for it. So, the cops and I walked out on the front balcony and used my key to open the sliding doors. Everything was as it should have been, and when we opened the door from the inside, it wasn't even locked. The cops searched the entire house and found nobody, and nothing was missing. I have no idea why there was a chair barricading my bedroom door, and why it appeared locked when the lock wasn't even turned. The police sent for a fingerprinting kit, and they found no fingerprints on the chair, not even my relatives. Nobody knew why. I had trouble sleeping in that room after that. The police kept an undercover cop outside for a week since my relative was a beloved member of the community. Nothing fishy happened. A few other creepy things happened in that home, if anyone is interested. One night, my neighbors and I were out on a pontoon, sharing stories about the area and our homes. Our houses were on a stretch of land bought out by professionals in Detroit and Minneapolis who decided to all build vacation homes together. My relative's house was built by a doctor from Detroit. One night after the family had finished supper, the mother couldn't find their youngest daughter. They sent out a search party and found nothing. 2 nights later, they found her body washed up on the nearby Indian Reservation Island. The kicker was that the island was upstream from the house. Almost everyone who lived on our street has claimed to see her, this 4-year-old in a long petticoat, wandering down the street. One woman claimed to see her trying to open our front door, about 20 years before she told me. Very creepy. I had a healthy fear of a few parts of the house. There was a dumbwaiter that had been sealed up, and later opened and turned into a laundry chute. Once, my cousin looked down jokingly during a midnight game of hide and seek and saw a face looking up at her. There was a back bedroom that was originally servants' quarters. We turned it into a guest room, and nobody liked to sleep there. We had cable installed in every room, and in that room, the channel would switch every half hour to static and then back again. Everyone the cable company sent out was equally baffled. One of them joked that our house was marked as haunted on the service notes. Eventually, we just took the television out of the room. The weirdest thing was in my bedroom. In the late 1990s, my relative bought the home from the daughter of the family who had lived there for the previous 50-odd years. Her uncle was schizophrenic, and in the 1970s, he lived in my room. When my relative moved in, she had the cedar paneling in the closets removed and replaced. When the old paneling was removed, it was covered in newspaper clippings. Mostly local, some national, all featuring disappearances and murders, and some interviews with celebrities and photographs of celebrities. We assumed this was normal, a form of insulation or prep for paneling, but of course not in this weird-ass house. It turns out that collage was once an art therapy favored for schizophrenia and other disorders, and the uncle was encouraged to paste pictures on the closet walls, but not on his bedroom walls, which to this day feature wallpaper installed in the 1920s. When a piece of the wallpaper started peeling, my relative had her handyman paste it back up. In order to make it look clean, he peeled it off further to reapply it. Underneath the wallpaper strip was writing. A lot of it. Things that make sense when associated with schizophrenia, but terrifying otherwise: "Get out, they can hear me," etc. I was understandably terrified of it in combination with the chair episode in my first comment. There were also lots of hidden nooks and crannies. A corner of my closet slid out to reveal a hiding spot. There was a tiny door in the kitchen that led to absolutely nothing. We turned it into a pantry, but once we put shelving in, the door wouldn't open anymore. We sealed it with caulk and paint and ignored it. The garage in the backyard had a cellar below that had concrete poured in sometime during the 1950s. The dogs would stand near the cellar door and bark if the garage door was open to them. This is as much as I can remember right now. I hope you feel as creeped out as I do when I think of that house.